So every year I see more new releases than I'm actually able to review on my channel. Sometimes that's simply because I didn't see them in the theater and I play catch up when they're out on Blu-ray. Other times I see them but a couple weeks late, and so there's not a lot of chat around them, so I just decide to skip reviewing them. And sometimes I see them even early and I just don't end up reviewing them for a number of different potential reasons that could cause me to do that. So this video is my attempt to play catch up on 11 different movies that I saw this year that were released this year, but I haven't reviewed quite yet. So let's talk about it. So this is a different type of video for me, and this one's really for my regular viewers that wondered what did I think about some of these movies that I haven't been able to talk about quite yet, and now you'll get your answer to it. Go ahead and comment down below on some of these movies. What did you think about it? Did you love them? Did you hate them? Did you have a very different reaction to me? We'll have a bunch of different conversations about a bunch of different movies going on. Hopefully we can have a nice lively discussion down in there. Also, one final thing before I go into this, some of these movies I actually did review over on my Patreon page. If you don't know what that is, that's a place where you can support my channel financially, and in return I do weekly live video chats with my patrons, live Q&A videos, a bunch of extra videos of movie reviews that they've kind of requested. So if you're interested in some of that behind the scenes content or supporting my channel, please consider supporting me over on Patreon. With that said, let's get started, and as I go into this, I'm going to do it in my traditional from the worst to the best fashion. Coming in last place out of these movies is Red Sparrow. Now, I have to be honest with you guys, I didn't finish watching the movie. I bought it on Black Friday because I hadn't seen it. I'd heard it was kind of edgy and I probably wasn't going to love it. My wife and I put it in. We watched about the first 40 minutes and we turned it off. So to be fair, this isn't a full review, but if there's only one movie this year that I haven't finished that I've started, and that's Red Sparrow. And if you've seen the movie, you can probably guess why. And if you haven't seen the movie, I don't need to, this isn't spoiling anything by saying this. The movie is very heavy on sexual violence, rape, molestation, and that's central to the plot. It's not like there's a sequence that happens and then it moves on. It's like sequence of rape and violence followed by sequence of abuse and girls crying as they're being put into sexually violating situations. And your ability to enjoy this movie depends entirely on your threshold for how much sexual violence you can watch and still get entertainment out of something. Watching this one with my wife was not a fun experience. We got 40 minutes into it. She's like, why are we watching this? And so we just turned it off. So at some point, I'll probably by the end of the year, before my final interview review, I'll watch it by myself. But watching it with her, it's the only movie this year we've turned off. And it was entirely because it was just so repugnant. So as of this moment, without having finished it, it's in last place because I couldn't even finish it with an F. Coming in at 10th place on here is going to be Robin Hood, our latest take on the classic English tale, and it's as bad as you're hearing it is. Now, it's professionally made, so it's slick. The shots are in focus, big explosions. There's all kinds of exciting action sequences in a certain sense. The cast here are a bunch of people that you like to see on screen, but their take on this material is not good. From the blatant cliches of it kicks off and it does the thing that's movies were doing like 10 years ago, and it seemed like they pulled this script from like a pile from 15 years ago. It was like, now you're going to hear the real story of what Robin Hood was really all about. And they used to do that stuff all the time. The real story of Robin Hood, which wasn't that even like the take of the Ridley Scott one from 8 years ago? And it's like voice over monologue explaining how like you think it's about this, but really it's about this, as generic of an intro type thing as you can do. And then it goes into a sequence that's like Black Hawk Down with like a machine gun bow and arrow, just shooting arrows as guys are like hiding between rocks that are exploding from arrows. And you're like, what? So is this like a spoofy kind of take on it? Because that's not a real thing. And then it shifts into the most hollow, fake political commentary imaginable. Because it's not commentary. It's just hollow pseudo allegory. And they're literally dropping phrases like the poor need to pay their fair share, stuff like that. I mean, modern language just dropped into this Robin Hood tale. It's just really awful. Of the movies this year, this is probably the one that just annoyed me the most, frustrated me the most. And I was like, oh, This is just painful to watch as they're attempting to like tie Robin Hood to modern day stuff, but with having nothing to say. We're not learning anything. They're not making commentary. It's just this shallow, we'll just drop phrases from today. And look, this is just what it's, just tedious, painful plot holes, a very unpleasant film. So Robin Hood gets a D-. Coming in ninth place in a big jump forward, this is a much more watchable film, The Christmas Chronicles. This is the Kurt Russell Santa Claus movie. It's not great, but it's very watchable. It's totally fine to watch with the family. It's fun to see Kurt Russell in a movie like this. And it's kind of a throwaway Christmas type plot about kids trying to catch Santa and getting swept away on an adventure with him, trying to fix his sleigh and stuff like that. So very Christmas movie type little kiddie adventure. Fun situations inside of it. But you know, it feels like a Hallmark movie or something. It feels direct to video. And so it's weird to see Kurt Russell in it at the same time. So it's strange, it's very middle of the road for me. Since it's free, it's worth checking out on Netflix just to see if you like it. There's this bizarre Jailhouse Rock sequence in it. If you know exactly what I'm talking about, if you've seen it, whenever we watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Pretty bizarre. That probably should have cut that one out, and I might have bumped it up just a little bit. So overall, I probably wouldn't fully recommend it, but I'm not recommending it. It's totally one of those mixed level ones. I'll give this one a C+. Would have been a B- without so much Jailhouse Rock. Coming in at 8th place is Mandy. So this is a Nicolas Cage horror, psychedelic, drug-infused revenge story. A ton of people love this one. It is unique. It is colorful. It is stylized. You get an insane Nicolas Cage in it. You get a axe that he wields, or he forges an axe himself to go to battle with a biker army. I mean, it is crazy nutso. For me, it was 25 minutes too long. The whole first hour is just so dragged out. It really kind of killed it for me. The whole thing is very slow paced, especially for the amount of plot that they have and what they're doing with it. I didn't get sucked into the weird, colorful world during that first hour. And we're like, all right, let's get to it. Like, we know where this is going. Let's get to that place. But if you want a movie that is colorful, wild, crazy, it has some amazing stuff in it. And there's a chainsaw fight where two guys are swinging chainsaws at each other. There's some insane gore. There's a whole lot of drug use in this movie that goes off into crazy places. And so for the right person, and I know a bunch of you guys love this one. Because I saw your reviews, that's why I had to check it out. I checked it out. It wasn't for me. It's not the right movie for me, but it's not. It's one that I'm glad that I watched one time. I don't know that I'd want to rewatch it. It's another one I'll give a C+2. Coming in at number 7 is Hereditary. Now, this is one of those movies that people were telling me for months, you got to check this one out. It's the scariest movie I've ever seen. And other people are like, it's overhyped. And I'd heard kind of the full spectrum of reviews of this one. So I had my buddy Andy over that does a bunch of the Marvel stuff with me. And he apparently he was the one that recommended it, and he doesn't do horror movies very well. Like he's in the chair, like bouncing. And so watching this movie with him was pretty incredible. Add to that, my wife doesn't do horror at all. And so she was just sitting in the room playing on her phone or whatever while we're doing this, getting some work done, but not really watching. And as we're watching through the movie, the first time my wife looks up at the screen is during the car ride home sequence. If you haven't seen it, not going to spoil it, but it's a very stressful scene inside of the movie. And if you have seen it, you know why that's a hilarious moment for someone to randomly look up inside of this movie. For me, it's another one I thought was probably about 20 minutes too long. It's all about the atmosphere and building this world, and you don't quite know where it's going. Like, I didn't know what this movie was about. I'd seen the trailers, but the trailers don't tell you what the plot is at all. And so it builds the atmosphere really well, and it's creepy, and I love that side to it. And the third act has a great jump scare at one part where the guy looks over and he looks back, and then just total freak out moment. Great. Ambiance to it is just unsettling from beginning to end. Probably about 20 minutes too long. It was just a little bit too slow paced for my taste. And then as you start going through it, and there's a sequence where you learn some stuff about the grandmother, and kind of from there on out where it started to give answers, I was like, these are really satisfying. These aren't the best answers that I've heard to some of this stuff. I wish this was going in a little bit of a different direction. And then as the movie as the movie's building to the close, if you've seen it, the character goes up into a space and it's like there's tension building inside of it. And as we're watching it, my wife accidentally puts the button on the remote, and so it cut away to something else. And we're like, what's going to happen? Whoa, what happened? What's the answer to all this? And it just cuts away to, like kid cartoons or something like that. What did you do? Why did you do this? And so we cut back freaking out, and then it gives the final answers, and I didn't think they were particularly satisfying. So I thought this movie was well made. It's unsettling. I don't get scared by movies, so it's like I watched it and went right to bed afterwards. It was fun to watch Andy freaking out. It was fun to watch my wife freak out when she looked up during the car ride sequence. For me, it's another movie that was like, that was well made. I'd slightly recommend it to the right people, but for me, it's not one that, once again, that I would want to rewatch, but I would give it a B-. Coming in at number 6 is going to be Final Score. This is one you probably haven't heard of if you're not into action movies. So what this is essentially it's Dave Bautista doing a 90s action movie. I mean, it's a straight up, it's like sudden death, Under Siege, all of those, that type of plot line. Except the main villain in it is Ray Stevenson, who is the Punisher. And then tied into the plot is Pierce Brosnan. So you've got a movie where you have Drax the Destroyer trying to stop the Punisher with a Bond played into the mix. I actually tweeted that out right before I watched it, and Dave Bautista retweeted me and was like, oh, that's a tweet right there, which that was a pretty cool day, the day that Dave Bautista decided to do that. So I really like this movie. It's not a great film. It's not like trying to be a great film. It's not, that's not its ambitions. It's trying to be a good throwback action movie, and it is. If you like those Van Damme, Die Hard, all that stuff from the late 80s, early 90s, it delivers a solid new version of that with Dave Bautista doing this type of movie that isn't made so often and certainly isn't put into theaters all that often. The budget kind of holds it back in the last 10 minutes. I thought the last 10 minutes, I was like, I wish this would have been done a little bit different. But besides that, I thought it was a well done direct-to-video action movie. This is what direct-to-action movies should be like. This is one of the good ones. So I definitely recommend it if you like the genre. If you don't like the genre, don't check it out. If you do, it's a solid B for me. Coming in at number 5 is Hunter Killer. Now, this is a movie I know I was supposed to hate. I know I was supposed to trash this one, and because that's like what the internet was doing, and it's like 33% or something like that on Rotten Tomatoes. So I went to go see it at the Dollar Theater with my brother-in-law and my nephews, and it's a perfectly fine political thriller. Like a spy, like action political thriller, a little bit of 24, a little bit of Hunt for Red October. And I just don't know. There's no reason to hate it. The title's terrible. It's a real crappy title. It's got Gerard Butler, which is a positive for me. I know some people are like, Gerard Butler thriller, that means it's crap. That's on you. That's as someone that likes the genre, that likes Gerard Butler, I mean, there's some improbabilities. It's not, A caliber, but it's a B grade version of these things, political action thrillers that I enjoy. There's a cool commando subplot on it that gives Pride some action. There's some very tense submarine things that kind of go down in it. And there's some interesting stuff inside the story. Not an amazing film, but I think a very solid, good film, and it's my type of film. Now, some of you that like Hereditary, like, this is blasphemy that you have Hereditary below this. It's really a matter of taste. This is my type of movie. Final Score is my type of movie. Hereditary is like, it's well made, but it's not a movie that I'm likely to rewatch. Hunter Killer, it's one that when it comes out on video, I'll be like, hey, I'll check this one out with my wife. Final Score, I really enjoyed that one. I'll probably watch it multiple times again in the future. So that's some of where my scoring comes from. Of that, I think Hunter Killer for me delivered better on what it was supposed to deliver. Final Score delivered better on what it was supposed to deliver than Hereditary, because Hereditary was just too slow paced for me. So it's kind of not one that I'd be likely to return to. So Hunter Killer, I'm gonna give it a B. Coming Coming in at number 4 is going to be The FrontRunner. Now, I actually got to go see this one at the Austin Film Festival at a screening that had the director at it, Ivan Reitman's son. Jason Reitman was at the screening. He came up, he did a Q&A afterwards, which was a very cool experience. I was like 2-3 rows back. I mean, he was right there. And then as he was doing the Q&A, if you don't know what this movie is, it's based off of during the primaries of 1988, the presidential primaries and the lead up to who was going to be the nominee. And there's the guy that was the front runner that ended up dropping out 3 weeks after he was announced as the front runner. Very interesting little story. So in the attendance at the event was the daughter of one of the characters in the movie. So in the Q&A, someone asked, what are some of these people up to? And Jason Reitman's like, well, this person's up to this, and this person, I think that he's doing like this. And then in the back of the room, you hear someone go, he's doing it, and answers the question like, who's back there? She stands up and goes, I'm his daughter, which is a little amazing moment to be there for. Now back to the movie. So the source material is very fascinating, as it's talking about a scandal for a politician that in 3 weeks just does major damage to him. And so kind of the nature of the story itself is very relevant to modern times and politics. And the story deals with the relationship between the actual behind the scenes behavior of politicians, the media and their responsibility to report things, and what is actually news, what isn't news, and what the public deserves to know, what the public needs to know. And so it's tackling all this stuff that is so relevant to today. And what I appreciated is that it didn't turn preachy. It didn't try and turn this into a statement about anyone in particular. It doesn't bring up Trump or Clintons or anything like that. It just tackled this in a way that explored it from different perspectives. And that's what Reitman said that he was trying to do with the film, is he wanted to tackle this, show this incident that happened that was so weird and fascinating from basically 20 different perspectives. And you're seeing this newsroom, and inside the newsroom, you have the perspective of the girl in it and the guys inside of it. And then over here, you've got the political campaign and the way they're responding to it, and the girl inside of the scandal, and the politician's wife and his kids. And so it's showing what all of these different people would think about what is going on and how it should be responded to. And the positive in that is that's interesting to see all these different perspectives. The negative, when it comes to being a movie, you kind of want an answer at the end. You want to kind of land somewhere where you go, oh, and you have a big insight about everything kind of going on. With this movie, because it's just perspective, let's explore it, show what happened, here's what we do know, here's what we don't know, perspective, it doesn't give you an answer. So at the end of it, you're like, so what really happened? Who did it? What? Who? What? Where am I supposed to land? And it's open. You're supposed to go and talk about it with your friends afterwards. That's good. So I liked the movie. It's at the same time, it didn't make as much of a long-term impact on me as I kind of wish that it would have. Still a solid film, so I would give it a B. Coming in third place is going to be BlacKkkLansman, the film about investigation into the KKK and a black guy that just decided to call them up and try and investigate into them. And so he's partnered up with Adam Driver, who's his face in real life, and he's the character behind the scenes as they try to infiltrate the KKK. Absolutely fascinating story, and explores through storytelling all sorts of ideas about America, race issues, the insanity of some of the stuff going on, the systemic stuff. 85% of the movie, I think, is really good and uses story to explore ideas and looks at things, and you can learn, and great acting. There's some dark humor inside of it that works really nicely. It's just an interesting story as it's based off real life. And then there's 15% of it where Spike Lee stops using story to make a commentary about modern times, and he just starts preaching. And there's parts where he's kind of dropping 21st century lingo in where people are like lecturing each other, and you're like, oh, he's like making this guy from 1973 or whatever is making a lecture about Trump. That's ridiculous. This is outrageous what he's doing right now. And then it, like, even some of the story where it ends, and it goes from telling a story to make a point to like in your face, like, I am lecturing you on politics. And it's not as strong when it does that. And it oversteps, and it's the argument that it's trying to make feels watered down as soon as you start doing it. So it's 85% fantastic, interesting, great story, acting, directing, pacing, all the stuff that you want in a movie. 85% is great. And it's just, if he could have held back, if he could have just let history, let the story preach, and not himself make his characters be his mouthpiece, it could have just launched it just that much higher. Still, very good movie. B+. Coming in at number 2, our runner-up here is The Favorite. Another one that I watched at the Austin Film Festival. I didn't know anything about this movie. I hadn't seen a trailer, I don't think. Maybe I'd heard some rumblings about it, but I went in only knowing Emma Stone and period piece. So I was kind of like, I don't know. This is not my genre at all. So I have no idea what's about to happen. And very pleasantly surprised by a weird, bizarre film. It's once again based off of history, and very weird history in England and the way things were running and all these manipulations and stuff. So fascinating story about these two competing people trying to control the queen and all the directions that it goes and all the manipulations and weird sexuality inside of all of it. But what makes this movie, well, there's a couple things that make this movie so fascinating beyond just the raw story of it. First one is the direction. It's shot almost or largely with like fisheye lenses to kind of like give it this look of crazy. And so as characters walk by the screen, they'll pan down this hallway and it's just doing the fisheye thing as it pans and warping your vision just to come to this whole distorted view of reality, which is like, that's what the whole thing plays like it's crazy. And was it Nicholas Holtz is in the movie and he's wearing these crazy outfits the whole time and these platform shoes, but because of the fisheye effect to it, whenever he walks through a door, he looks like he's 8 feet tall, and it's just directed in such a weird, crazy way inside of it. And then it's just the characters in here are all so interesting in different ways and so manipulative, and you hate all of them. They're like despicable people in certain senses. In other ways, they're fascinating, and you're rooting kind of for all of them, and you want all of them to fail at other times, and you can't decide where you're at. And the whole thing just has a sharp sense of humor to it. It's not a movie that I would likely to rewatch, but a great, like, cool thing to watch one time. It's just not my genre. Very cool film. I'm sure I've seen other people say it's their favorite movie of the year. The Favorite is their favorite. That's actually making that joke. But that wouldn't be the case for me, because this just isn't my thing enough. But for a movie that's not my genre, wow, this was such a pleasant surprise. Another one that I would give a B+, might have gone a little bit higher if I could have rooted for anyone in here, but I couldn't really root for anyone because they're all such horrible, horrible people. But coming in first place, I watched this one just a couple days ago, and that was 8th Grade. I watched this one at home with my wife, and this is just a fantastic character study of modern day 8th graders. I did youth ministry for 13 years, 14 years, and still kind of teach teenagers from time to time. And so I've spent a ton of time with teenagers. And so this is the world that I was in, of the insecurities, the bad decision making, the short-sightedness, the desperation for affirmation from different people, the hormone, the crazy of this. And I've never seen a movie capture the 8th grade so well, and likewise capture what modern day 13-year-old culture is. Modern day middle school culture with technology and exploring ideas that, as someone who's working with teenagers, that was the conversation of the last 10 years is how rapidly they're gaining technology and being exposed to things sooner and sooner, and how that's like this thing that's constantly being talked about. That's actual things we're talking about. And that's what the movie explores, that even high schoolers were acknowledging. That's a conversation I had with a high schooler about 2.5 years ago, where he's like, oh, it's crazy what middle schoolers now are being exposed to. And he was in high school talking about this. And so the movie just captures reality so well. And explores it and the ways the pieces fit together and how uncomfortable it is, while being captivating, while being entertaining, while being funny, while just making you just feel like, ugh, please stop being middle schoolers. Please stop being so insecure. All of you are just get over this. But That's what middle school is. That's what that phase of life is. This is a very neat experience that people need to watch, and it captures something so well. So for me, as much as for the ambitions of this film, it was about as perfect as it could be. So I'd give this one an A, because if it was fully ambitious, this level of capturing what it's trying to do so well, it got an A+. But because of the level of its ambitions, I would only go an A on this one. But as if an A is a low score, so I think I've given 3 A's this entire year. But I love this one. So share your thoughts down below on these movies. Let's get a bunch of conversations going. Consider supporting me over on Patreon. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.